War jingle! Happy time has just begun. Brother, sister, smart, dumb, fun. Yeah!
Let's go! Look at us enjoying a show at the brunching hour, at the tail end of the brunching hour. Happy Sunday. Yes, you're not imagining things. You're not having some sort of mental, episode. It is 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Central, 11 o'clock Mountain, and 10 o'clock Pacific, and we are live on a Sunday afternoon. I've got Marla the cat down here with me, who's desperately wanting some pets.
I got Bobo back here, and I got Cuckoo right there, and they're both cleaning themselves. They're like, yay.
I was gonna say it's bath time. It's bath time in Chelsea, Michigan.
It's bath time.
Serious pet time, and so Marla, you're in the doghouse. Daddy tried to give Marla some chicken, and she wouldn't eat it because I don't know. She just was feeling moody. I don't know what you're in the doghouse.
She's got the January blues.
She does. She's like, no, I don't want this chicken, and I get that. I'm feeling like that, right? I've been kind of like that. Been kind of surly all day, just like,
yeah.
I don't know. I hate everybody right now. Not hate. Hate's a strong word. I just dislike right now. And that's just because it's cold and it's snowing. And I have forgotten what real winter looks like because we didn't have one last year. And I have the memory of your average goldfish. So now, since we're having real winter again, it's like, this is stupid. Why do I live here? And then I think, I could live in Florida. And I'm like, no, I don't want to live in Florida.
No. I was thinking, I'd like to eat some feelings. I'd like a cheeseburger and a big thing of hot chocolate.
Well, Joe and I went out last night after we got back from Detroit. We'll talk about our being in Detroit. And we went to a little Mexican restaurant, really great little Mexican restaurant here. It's La Piñata. And they make a really great sangria margarita. Yeah, and a really fantastic burrito that has all the nacho cheese and stuff on it. It's all the creamy stuff, all the processed yummy.
Amazing.
It was really good.
I want that. I want to go to there.
You do. Yeah, we would see full Marguerite Anne if we went there because I couldn't finish the sangria margarita. It was that big. Yeah, I couldn't finish it.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah, it was
quitter.
Huge. It was yes. Quit. That is me. 100% quitter. So, yeah. So, and it's funny because like I said, we did go to Detroit yesterday and we saw the production 6, which is very timely because that's what we were talking about today. We were talking about the 6 wives of Henry the VIII, or as I called them earlier, the 6 chicks of that Tudor dick, because that's what he was.
He was. And the thing is, he gets a lot of blame for everything, but he was surrounded by male advisors who were always encouraging his worst instincts.
Tara Trotter is with us. Yo, Tara, what's up? And you are not wrong. Quitters never win. I did not win last night. There was no winning for me last night, even though everything I had was delicious. So I kind of won. But if I was really a winner, I would have just stayed until that thing was down and in me, and I had to basically get rolled home. So
well, and the thing is, Jenny, when you drink that much tequila and wine together, there's no winning.
There's nothing good as it. And I stopped before I got the headache, so I was actually high-fiving myself. I'm like, stop before I got the headache. Look at me. I am a paragon of control.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's me. That's what everybody says about me. Yeah, so we went yesterday to Detroit. The Fisher Theater was showing 6, which is a really fantastic musical theater production that is about the 6 wives of Henry the VIII. And I got to tell you, and I don't want to talk about it too much because we're going to talk about it in a minute, but damn, that was amazing. So, yep. So, yeah, happy January to everybody and all of that. We are nearly halfway through January, people, so just hang on tight. We're getting there.
I know, right? I was like, tomorrow's the 13th and the full moon. I was like, wow, soon my Audible credit will roll over and I'll get another credit. Yay.
I I have one Audible credit sitting there right now taunting me. It's like, if I use my Audible credit, I'm gonna have to wait. Oh wait, you know what? No, my Audible credits roll on the 14th. Ooh, so I could burn through it right now.
Ooh. That sounds
I know.
delicious.
Isn't
Mhm.
What does that mean about us as adults? Does that mean we have like what does that mean? What does that say about us when you just can't wait till that next Audible credit pops up? So
I think that's why we're not hip, sexy, or cool, Jenny. We're like, our
I think
Audible
that's one of the
credit.
yes, or you get all excited because you finally figured out how to use that app where you can, use the library to listen to your audiobooks. So, oh, look at Tara. Tara thinks we're actually the coolest. You're right, Tara. We are
Oh,
the coolest.
thank
So,
you,
yeah.
Tara.
Because I got two books. One of them was so one of the books that I'm listening to right now is Ina Garten's um biography, which is great. I actually really want to talk about that book. I think that's one of the things I want to talk about coming up in February because
Mm.
it's a really great book. It's a fantastic story, and Ina Garten's one of my heroes anyway. So peace out on that. And there's the other book that I can't remember what I'm listening to because I've got completely preoccupied with Ina Garten's book. So there you go. All
There
right.
you go.
Yes. So, as you can see, we are talking about the six wives of Henry the VIII, part one. There's so much to say about these women
Mhm.
that Anne required two parts. So, for the first time ever, we are doing a two-part show, part one today, and then we're going to do a to be continued. So, you guys are going to get so into this, and then we're going to throw up there the to be continued sign, and then you guys are going to be like,
Oh.
oh, just like at the end of Wicked when everybody lost their shit when we learned that it would be to be continued. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
so, all right. So, and because you're doing all the talking today, I will go ahead and take us through the synopsis. Welcome
Okay.
back, everybody. We are the Brother Sisters. This is the Brother Sister Smart Dumb Fun. We didn't just make up our name for television. That's our real name. Thanks, Michael. That's our dad for the name. So there you go. Anne and I feel this name is so cool that though both of us are married, neither of us took the names of our husbands because this name was too cool. And as my husband, we like to say, he would not take my married name. So there you go.
Yeah. I was going to say, Duncan wouldn't take mine either. And I was like, I'm not going to become a W, please.
Yeah, I'm used to being at the front of the alphabet, and I've kind of
Mhm.
gotten used to that, and I like it
Me too.
there. I like it towards the front of the alphabet, so
Mhm.
I like being first-ish, not
Yeah,
like
exactly.
super
At least being
first.
able to
So
see the front of the line from where I'm standing.
correct, and that way, if you want to leave early, you can to whatever it is. So
Exactly.
it's nice. So, yes, we are, again, we're sisters. We're in our 50s, which means we are Generation X, and the reason we talk so much about that is because that is a badge of honor to be part of
Mhm.
Gen X. It means that the reason that that's important is it means that there's pieces of furniture that we were not allowed to sit on, and entire rooms that we could not enter without adult supervision. That was a thing back in the day. This whole idea where kids get to go everywhere they want and do anything they want. No, no. I'm
Mm-mm.
trying to think of some of the rooms that we were shut out of. Okay, well, Mom's White Couch. We'll start with that
Mom's
one.
white couch. Yeah, mom's white
Mom's
couch.
White Couch.
The living room in general. We weren't forbidden to go in the living room, but when we were in the living room, we were questioned as to what
Yes.
our purpose was,
What are you
and we
doing
were
in there? What are you
definitely
doing in there?
not allowed on the white couch. And then Grandma Susie's entire living room, we were not
Correct.
allowed in.
Yes.
And I knew
And
lots of friends who were not allowed in whole wings of the house.
yes. And see, that was one of the things that I always liked about Grandma Brothers' house is that we weren't really there was no place that we couldn't
Mhm.
go in that house.
Right.
We were allowed in all rooms, which was kind of a cool new thing for us.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody was
Yeah.
nobody was like, "What are you doing? Why are you looking at that? What's wrong with you? Did you break that? Get out of here." No, it was great. I remember going
Yeah,
through
it
grandma's
was.
clodsets.
Yes. And she didn't seem to mind all that. So yeah, it was nice. It was cool. So,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure that grandma's like that back room she had. I always felt that room was haunted as fuck. So
Oh, I did
I
too.
did
Her
not like that
closet.
room.
Yeah, I always thought
Yeah,
so too.
haunted as fuck.
Yeah, something was going on in there.
Yeah, it never felt good in there. I'm like, this room
Mhm.
doesn't feel good. I'm
Yeah.
leaving, and that's because it was haunted as fuck. So there you go.
Yeah, I always felt like whenever I was in that little closet of hers, I always felt like I wasn't in the house. I was someplace besides the house.
Ooh, like a whole Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe thing.
Yeah, I always felt like I was like,
Yeah.
this is not part of the house. because she had like a little walk-in closet, which was very unusual then.
Yes.
And yeah, and it was like, this is not part of the house. So I always felt strange, but
I always felt like
what
you
is
couldn't
peace?
hear anything in that room. Like sound didn't. That was always the thing for me is like sound didn't sound in there.
Mhm.
If that's
Yeah.
I didn't, because I was only, a little kid in there and I didn't know how to articulate it, but that's what it felt like to me. And it always felt, like I said, haunted and like you couldn't hear things from the outside. I'm like, yeah,
Mhm. Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
agree. I agree.
Yes. So as you can see, we talk about smart stuff, dumb stuff, fun stuff, including things like how our grandmother's bedroom was haunted. So there you have it. We are not hip, cool, or sexy. We know this because we go to matinees to see live shows. We go because it's cheaper than going to an evening show and because it's exhausting to go out after dark. We all want to be, we're at that age now where we want to be tucked in after dark because it's like, it's too scary to be outside at night.
And it's cold.
And it's, honestly, that's the big thing is that I don't like to be cold. So, the fact that we went out uh, after we got home last night I'm like, I was high-fiving myself for getting out after coming home.
Oh man.
Because yeah, I drove to Detroit to see the show and then drove home afterwards, which makes for a long day, but it's a really fun day. It was just really fun. I love going to Detroit and the Fisher Theater is toy. It's all Art
Mhm.
Deco and sexy and just really cool. The Fisher building itself is awesome.
Mhm.
And we had good lunch over at the Detroit Shipping Company, which is good. I had a yummy hamburger. I wish they would have cooked the bacon like you're supposed to cook bacon, but no real complaints there. The Gruyere was amazing. So there you go. Yes, let's see. We are not a true crime, a celebrity, or influencer podcast. We are queens for a day. So join us. You can be a queen too. There you go. Yeah. It's interesting because there's podcasts everywhere now. They are literally like mosquitoes on the bayou. They are very and so we're one of many podcasts, that's for sure. But we don't have the footprint that many podcasts do because we're not famous to start with. Because that's what you do. You get famous and then you podcast. So there
Hmm.
you go. And then you have like all of your followers. So we're trying to do this the homegrown way. So as a result of that, you could always follow us and like us and share us with all of your people, which would be super helpful. So as you've already sort of figured out, this podcast is not PG-13. We're going to talk about some fucking awesome women and some shitty ass men. So be prepared to hear some swears. We're not sorry. Let's see. We are good to listen to when you want to learn things about stuff, and we are especially good to listen to when you need a distraction while you are shoveling snow.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
that's a thing. So,
Mhm.
yes. Again, feel free to listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. Ask Alexa to play us because she will. She'll just pick some rando episode and start playing it. Usually it's the most recent episode, but sometimes it's just some rando episode. We would love your feedback. Give us your feedback on the Facebook, on Q&A, on polls, on YouTube, all of the good stuff. We want to hear from you. So do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Please and thank you.
Yes. Please and thank you. All right, so let's talk about the smart stuff. Here it is again. Again, YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. All right, we both picked the same smart, dumb, fun thing this week. And start us off.
Well, I saw this musical when I was in Toronto in 2023, and I'm not a big musical theater person. I have said that before. When I do like musical theater, it's usually kind of a darker show, but I have been obsessed with the wives of Henry the VIII for all of my adult life and have read up on them. And when I heard that this musical was coming out, I was very excited about it. And it just happened that we were in Toronto and I was like looking for stuff to do. And I was like, oh, let's go see this. I love it. It is super engaging and the music is great and the costumes are so cool. And the story is basically these women are getting together to figure out who had it worse, because they always get compared to each other. So they're comparing each other's stories and who had it worse in the end. And it's just, it's kind of funny. It's definitely dark. It's just, man, I loved it so freaking much. So when I heard it was coming to Detroit, I asked some people that I knew if they wanted to go and see it with me because I was going to go by myself if nobody went. And I thought, oh, maybe I'll just see if anybody else wants to go with me too. And fortunately, everybody I asked said yes. So it was
Well,
not only was it an awesome musical, it was just a really fun day.
it was an excellent day. Um, yeah, I myself, unlike my sister, I love me a good musical. I know, and that sort of seems counterintuitive because I'm like the jock of the group and Anne is like the artist of the group. But I have always loved musical theater since I can remember, since, Grandma Brothers took us to see Annie when we were like, in first and second grade. And I've always just found something really interesting about one minute you're talking and the next minute you're singing. I just, and that, we'll have a thought and then it will lead us into a song. I don't know what it is. And then, of course, The Sound of Music. I was like, I love this so much. So I love musical theater, and by even musical theater standards, I thought this show was banging.
Hmm.
It presents very much like a concert, and it was
Hmm.
kind of funny because when Chip and I were driving home yesterday, Chip was kind of reading the program to me and kind of talking about like who wrote it. It was written by a couple of Cambridge students, because the original
Hmm.
production was actually in the UK,
Well, it
and
is their history.
it is, which makes perfect sense. But it's, and like they showed the young woman who this was kind of came out of her brain, and she's just this cute little 30-year-old nerd. And I'm like, you know what? This young woman has probably been obsessed and thinking about and writing about these six queens since she was probably like 14.
Hmm.
And I just think it's really cool that you can take something that in this historical context and apply this incredible creativity to it and come out with something like this. Because what I loved about it was not only was it fun to learn something about the history of these women, but I also thought it was so much fun to figure out who they were, because all of these women present like the Spice Girls. They walk out, you're like, you immediately go to Spice Girls in their out the terms of their outfit and how they present. You're like, oh my god, it's the Spice Girls, and they do make a reference to that right away. But then as they do their solo numbers and they're singing about who they were and what happened to them, it was fun to sit there and be like, oh, that's totally, Izzy Azalea, or like, oh my God, that's Jennifer Hudson. And so what's cool, like in the program, they tell you who's who. Like, for instance, Catherine of Aragon was inspired by Beyonce, and Jane Seymour was inspired by Adele, and Anne of Cleves was inspired by Nicki Minaj,
And
um,
Rihanna.
and Rihanna, which I thought was amazing. And Catherine Howard was inspired by Ariana Grande and Britney Spears. And I actually thought Anne Boleyn sounded just like Britney Spears.
Hmm.
And Catherine Parr was just, was inspired by Alicia Keys. And I loved learning that because I'm like, yeah, because and again that idea that you're basing these queens and their sound and their ideas based on these modern, really awesome women, I thought was super clever. So I thought it was really great. You can't help but love it. There's so much energy involved in it, and I thought the ballads are perfectly placed, and
Hmm.
the end is great. How they kind of turn, they give it a quick turn, and you get to enjoy, them being this, you know, this united six, which I thought was just super smart and clever as well. So, yeah, if you get a chance to see this, go see it. It's a ton of fun. It's a fast 80 minutes of
Hmm.
show. There's no intermission, so pee ahead of time,
Because you don't want to miss
and
anything.
you don't want to miss a thing. You don't, and go see it though. Especially if you're a woman, especially if you have girls, take them to see this. There was a little girl sitting next to us, probably about maybe 7,
Hmm.
who was she was all decked out in her tutu and her finery, and she was just hopping up and down with the music, and just this kid was like digging it. I'm like, I loved
Hmm.
seeing that. I love seeing this little girl watching these women who were all amazingly talented. Yeah, it was a freaking blast. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a blast. And I was going to say I've seen it with two different casts, and both casts were amazing. I couldn't say I liked one more than the other. Just amazingly talented women, and of course the music is supplied by a 4-piece band on stage, and that's all women as well. So
Mhm.
it's just a really it's oh man, it's so and
Well,
most of the audience was women and some gay men.
yes. But I think if you enjoy being entertained, you would
Mhm.
like this,
Yeah,
regardless of whether you're male or female. And I think
yeah.
that's one of the things. It's like you can't help it. The music is just catchy as hell. It's banging. It's
Hmm.
just a fun show. Very clever, very well written, and does a great job of presenting these amazing, interesting women of the past who survived in their own different ways and didn't.
Hmm.
under very difficult circumstances,
Yeah.
Like, what do you do if you're a woman in the 1500s, 1600s? You marry King Henry the VIII and take your chances and
And you
roll the
take your
dice.
chances. And the thing is, you're rolling your dice with any marriage in that time. So
Pretty much. Yeah. All right. So since we're in the mood, Anne, let's continue to talk about the six. And because this is part one, we're going to talk about Anne specifically is going to take us through the history of the first three wives of Henry VIII. Let's
yes.
go.
Let's
All right.
go. So
Here we
the
are.
first three wives, we have Catherine of Aragon. She was number one. We have Anne Boleyn, number two, and Jane Seymour, number three. So those are the three women we're going to talk about today. But the first thing I want to do is just give you a little bit of history about Henry VIII, the man that they all have in common, because all these women were very different women. Really, the only thing they had in common was being married to Henry VIII. And Henry VIII was actually not meant to be king. It was actually his older brother, Arthur. So Henry VIII was born in June of 1491, just before Columbus sailed the ocean blue. He died in January of 1547, so he was 55. His father was Henry the VII and barely had the right to be king. He was a Lancaster, but his last name was Tudor. His mother was a Lancaster. So he had the right to be king ish on his mother's side. And actually, his father, Henry the VII, actually won a battle, killed Edward III, and that's how he became king. And in order to solidify his claim as king, he married the king that died. He married his daughter, Elizabeth York. So this is basically a joining of the Lancaster and the Yorks and the ending of the War of the Roses. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's how it happened. Actually, Elizabeth York, his mother, had more of a right to the throne than his father did. So, his mother was the daughter of the king, and his father was the nephew of the king. So, yeah, so he actually, so that's one of the reasons why he married her, is that he needed to solidify the fact that he could be king. Henry was the third child, a second son. He was raised until the age of 10 to enter the priesthood because he was the second son. And then when his brother Arthur, who was 5 years older, died at age 15, that's when he became the heir to the throne. But he was never trained as a king, unlike his
Now,
brother Arthur.
how did Arthur die?
He died. They think he died of the sweating sickness, which was a thing that happened. It was this disease that happened in Great Britain and in Europe, but really hit hard in Great Britain, especially in the summers. We don't have this disease now, so it kind of faded into something else, but it was really nasty. You would be fine in the morning eating breakfast, you'd get sick, and by dinner you would be dead. So and this sweating, it was like this, this really high fever would come on, and lots of people died from this disease. So that's how he died, and he was only 15, and he'd been married about 5 months.
Wow.
So that's how he died. And there were rumors that Arthur was not a very robust young man anyway, because actually Catherine of Aragon, his wife, was actually married to Prince Arthur first, also got the disease at the same time that he did, but she survived. So it had about
it was contagious then.
It had about a 30 to 40% death rate. So that's
high.
That's high. So it was enough, it could wipe out a family in a day. Yeah.
Wow.
And if you got it, you were expected to, if your family got it, you had to put certain wreaths on your door to let everybody know in town that you had it, and you were supposed to stay quarantined for months.
Oh.
Yeah. So needless to say, Henry was considered a good-looking kid. He was considered smart. He was very charming. Everybody liked him. He was not ever raised to be king. Another thing that he did was he brought around the English Reformation, and I'll talk about that more when I talk about Anne Boleyn, which was basically the divine right of the king. So the king could be the head of the church and do whatever he wanted, and he used that power to set aside his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, and marry Anne Boleyn. Henry did father one son out of wedlock. His name was Henry Fitzroy, and that was with Elizabeth Blount. And he actually acknowledged this young man. Henry died, though, when he was 17, so he never really was a big player in the throne. He died, they think, of tuberculosis. So that's just something to know, that Henry had a history of liking the ladies. So
he was one to mess about, if you will.
if you will. So if you have any other questions, but I figured that's just kind of some basic, who was Henry? He wasn't meant to be king. He was never really trained to be king. He was kind of a spoiled little boy and turned out to be a spoiled little fat man. So,
Okay, I have a question. So
Mhm.
okay, if you're being trained to be king, what are they doing?
Okay,
Are
so
they
you
like
would
just
be,
teaching you about foreign affairs and things
yeah,
like
like
that?
foreign affairs, you'd be sitting on the King's Council. You might even be part of your father's King's Council so that you could learn about how the King's Council works, how decisions are made. You would be sent to other noblemen's homes to live for a while and learn how they conduct business and how they conduct their homes. Um, you would learn other languages so that you would be able to communicate with other leaders and their diplomats. And Henry was well educated, but his education had been very focused on the church. So,
Probably theology, yeah.
yeah, theology. So, these are all things that you would do so that you could be a well informed leader, a well informed monarch. So,
Gotcha.
yeah. And
Okay.
Henry was never betrothed to anybody because he was going into the priesthood, while Arthur was betrothed to Catherine of Aragon when he was 2. So, there would have been like this big emphasis on a royal marriage.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah, because that's kind of, alliances are built through marriage. So yeah, makes
Exactly.
sense.
As we know from his father and mother, that was an alliance that was
Hmm.
built, so there wouldn't be any more civil war.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Cool.
All right. So Catherine of Aragon, she's Spanish, and she was born in June of 1485. And she died in January of 1536, probably of cancer. Her father was King Ferdinand II of Aragon, so that's how we have Catherine of Aragon, and her mother was Queen Isabel of Castile. And so her mother was actually a queen in her own right. She just wasn't a queen because she married Ferdinand. She had her own country, which was Castile. So when Ferdinand and Isabel got together, they joined their countries to make Spain, basically. So that's
Cool.
how Spain came to be the Spain that we know of. Now, the Castile line, which is part of Isabel's name, that actually went to Catherine's older sister. So that's why she's Catherine of Aragon. She was extremely well educated. And this is another thing that's interesting. Queen Isabel of Castile actually had a better title to the English throne than Catherine's future father-in-law, Henry the VIII. Both through her mother and her grandmother, she had more title to the throne. So that was another reason why. One, they wanted a Spanish, because Spain was very, very powerful then. So an English and Spanish alliance would have been very advantageous to England. And then also because Catherine had this English blood in her, that would have also been a bolster to the Tudor line. So she was very advantageous to the Tudor line. Plus, she was bringing a real hefty dowry. So they were all in about Catherine of Aragon.
She
She
was a
was,
catch.
yeah, she was a super catch. Super catch. Even though she wasn't the oldest daughter, she was the youngest. Still, she was a big, big catch. So she was the youngest of 6 children. She was betrothed to Arthur, Henry's brother, when she was 3, and she was raised to be a queen. So unlike Henry, who was never really raised to be a king, she was raised to be a queen. So she was super well educated. She got to see her parents ruling a country together. So she knew what to do. Man, she was smart. So smart. And from the age of 3, they called her the Princess of Wales. That was her title from the age of 3.
Whoa.
Yeah. So in
Damn.
1501, when she was 15, she sailed to England to marry Prince Arthur. He died 5 months later. She was 16 when he died. So he got this. They both got the sweating sickness. He did not survive. She did. She was 16 years old, and supposedly their marriage was never consummated, which is something that will come back when she marries his brother. Now, because of a dispute between her father and her father-in-law about her dowry, she was trapped in England. The English said that the Spanish still owed them money because she did marry Arthur. And the Spanish said, no, we don't owe you money because their marriage was never consummated. You need to send her back so we can marry her to somebody else. Oh, and send the rest of her dowry back. So she was stuck in England for like 7 years while these two men bickered over her.
Being a woman in the 1500s was so great.
I know, right?
So great.
Basically, she was confined to this small house, the small little palace, with hardly any money, not enough money to cover her expenses until in 1507, they made her she served as the Spanish ambassador to England.
Okay.
And she was the first woman to ever be an ambassador. So there you go. And then when Henry the VII died, Henry the VIII became the king, and he got a special dispensation to marry his brother's wife, because supposedly their marriage was never consummated. So he had a thing for Catherine. He developed a crush on her when she was like at their wedding. You know, that's the fable that he developed this crush on. She was a very attractive young woman. And yeah, you know, he was this noble queen and he wanted to marry her. So he was 18 and she was 23. She was very popular with the English people. The English people liked her from the beginning. They liked her when she married Arthur. They thought she was, she was a righteous dude. So in 1511, she gave birth to their first living child. His name was Henry, but he died about 50 days after he was born. They don't know why he died, but he died. In 16.
It feels like everything was just lining up to kill you back then.
Oh yeah, especially children under 5. Your mortality rate was like 50%. It was very high. Yeah, and that was for like wealthy people. You know, like it was 50% for wealthy people. I mean, if you were poor, woof.
Forget about it.
Forget about it. God. So in June of 1513, she was appointed to be by Henry to be the governor of the realm and the captain of generals while he went to France to start some war. So he needed somebody to rule the country while he was out of the country, and so he picked her to do it because she knew how to govern. During this time. She was trained up. During this time, Scotland invaded England and she raised an army, rode north. She was very pregnant when she did this, in full armor. She gave a rousing speech to the troops, like, Braveheart sort of thing. King James of Scotland died in battle, the battle that she, got everybody all excited about. Catherine wanted to send his head to Henry as a trophy. It's like, look, honey, I've protected the country for you. Here's your enemy's head. And her advisors had to talk her out of it. And instead, she just sent his bloody coat. And so it was like, because in Spain, that's how you say love, honey. I love you, baby. Here's the head of your enemy.
I have brought you the head of your enemy. I love you.
I love you. Exactly. So, she did this. And the thing is, like,
he went to Jared? I don't, okay.
Exactly. Henry didn't get very much done in France during this war, but boy, did she get some shit done. And after that, the English people loved her. She protected them from the goblins of Scotland, because they did not think much of Scotland, and she protected them. They adored her.
Goblins. Ooh.
Yeah. So anyway, in 1516, she gave birth to her daughter, Mary. And this is her only child to survive into adulthood. And Mary would eventually become the Queen of England. And she made sure that her daughter was very well educated and a good Catholic.
Wait, was that Bloody Mary?
That was Bloody Mary. Yes. Her daughter is Bloody Mary.
Okay. Yeah.
Someday we can do a whole thing about Mary, because Mary had it. I was like, damn, Mary did not have it any better. Queens did not have it any better than anybody else. So.
Nope.
But anyway, her daughter was very well educated and educated to be an extremely good Catholic. In fact, Catherine kind of started this trend among wealthy, noble Englishmen, was to educate their daughters. This whole thing was started because of her. In total, Catherine gave birth to 6 children, and only one of them survived into adulthood, and that was Mary. In 1525, So, they're both middle-aged now, and she's a little bit older than Henry, if we remember. It's starting to become obvious that Catherine is never going to have a living male child, and Henry's starting to feel sorry for himself. So he becomes infatuated with Anne Boleyn, and he decides his marriage to Catherine is wrong in the eyes of God, and it should be annulled so that he can marry Anne. And the reason why he decides is because he decides that the dispensation he got from the Pope to marry his brother's wife was incorrect. And also maybe that Catherine wasn't a virgin when he married her. Now that he thinks about it, he's not positive. So
this is how many years later? 20,
20, it's like 19 years like no, it's like this is like 18 years later. So
Okay.
it takes this whole thing to like set aside Catherine takes like 6 years. So
Okay. Wow.
it's just,
Wow.
Catherine dug in hard.
Yeah,
So this, like I said, this bullshit goes on for 6 years, and Catherine never gave up. She always said that she came to the wedding bed a virgin, and that as far as in the eyes of God, she had been a good wife. And his argument also is that the reason why he knew it was condemned by God was because he didn't have any living children. And she's like, well, yeah, you got a daughter right here, and I got pregnant a bunch of times, so I'm sorry that it didn't work out, but maybe that's the will of God. But Henry wasn't having it because he was not used to not getting his own way.
and he
So
wanted that young, hot, sweet piece of Anne Boleyn.
he did. In fact, for almost 6 years, there were two courts set up in with around the king. There was the court of Catherine of Aragon and the court of Anne Boleyn. So all these people are living real close together. In fact, Anne Boleyn started out as one of Catherine of Aragon's maids of honor. So, it was very incestuous. Oh, and we'll get into more incest in a little bit. But anyway, in 1531, Catherine is dismissed from court. She's sent away from court, and Henry gives her rooms to Anne. So she has rooms right next to the king. And Catherine is moved far away from the castle, and she never sees Henry again. So he was done with her. Now, their marriage still wasn't dissolved for another 2 years, but he sent her away 2 years before that.
Where did he send her?
He sent her to this other part of England, basically to another castle where she had to live. And then he kept her, he kept her in seclusion so that her supporters couldn't visit her. So she couldn't be seen because she still had a lot of support in Spain and a great deal of support in England. Anne Boleyn was not popular. This decision was very unpopular. The only people that liked this decision were people that were going to profit from Anne Boleyn becoming queen. So it was a very people were afraid that it would break out into civil war. They were afraid Spain would invade them. It was a very icky time to be in England.
Why, and again, it's one of those things where I'm like, well, I don't care what everybody thinks. I'm doing what I want to do. It's like, yeah, that's an audacious plan right there.
Exactly. Well, he was king, so he could do whatever he wanted, and he had enough people around him, like Thomas Cromwell and the Howards, who were part of Anne Boleyn's family. Plenty of people telling him that this was the right thing to do, and it was what he wanted. So he's like, okay, I'm going to go do it. In 1533, after becoming the head of the Church of England, he set aside his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, and that made his daughter Mary declared a bastard. And they had, by the time this was all finished, they had been married for 24 years.
Wow.
So, yeah. And then she didn't die. She died 2 years after that. So, yeah, she died a sad, really sad, lonely woman. And also, when he set her aside in 1531, he didn't allow her to see her daughter again. So she did not see her daughter ever again.
God, Henry sucked. I'm gonna say that more than once today.
It was all ways for him to try to make her actually agree to the annulment and join a convent. That was his thing. He took everything he could away from her to try to make her do what he wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what a great guy. Yeah, again, being a woman.
Yeah, she was a queen, Jenny, a queen of royalty. She was like, she had more royal blood than he did. She was better educated, more worldly, better traveled, a better leader, better warrior, all these things.
Obviously. God.
Yeah. And she could still have babies,
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So there you go, Catherine of
Right.
Aragon. hmm
So yeah, and what? So 24 years. Okay, so she was with him a long time.
She was with him a
Yeah.
very long time, very long time. So next comes Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn was not popular. Women hated her because they thought she was a husband stealer. Catholics hated her because she was a reformist. Um, Henry's friends hated her because they thought she was sneaky. But she was just really okay. So she waited 7 years to marry Henry, 7 years, and she didn't give it up the entire time.
The girl.
I know, exactly. So she was, all right. So she's English, and we do not know when she was born. She was from a, how do I want to say this? She was from a noble family, but not a royal family. And she was a daughter, and I think the second daughter. So she was not, so, so they think she was either born in 1501 or 1507. Nobody's sure. Her father was Thomas Boleyn, and he was the second son in the Boleyn family. So he wasn't, top of the line. He was an ambassador to France. He became the first Earl of Wiltshire as Anne was promoted. But, he wasn't, like I said, he wasn't royal. He was just a nobleman, kind of like a knight. So her mother was Elizabeth Howard, and this is where the real family connection comes in. So she was the sister of Thomas Howard, who was the third Duke of Norfolk, and Norfolk was one of the major assholes in all of this. But yeah, that's where the family power dynamic was with her brother. So Thomas Boleyn wasn't even really in charge of his own family. His brother-in-law was, so so she's got kind of low birth, but she's still a noblewoman, and he was an ambassador. So in 1513, she was shipped off to Netherlands to be in service of Marguerite of Austria. So she spent a year doing that. And then for a number of years, she was in the French court of Queen Mary of France, who was Henry's sister. Go ahead, Jenny.
Okay, what do you do at court?
Well, it's funny because royalty does not, they have maids. How do I want to say this? If you're royal, you don't want a common person helping you into your underwear. You have other noble people who are your servants, quote unquote. And so as served in the court she was kind of a servant to royalty, which is a pretty good gig. She gets seen a lot. She gets to wear nice clothes. Maybe she can make a good marriage. It's a pretty sweet gig if you're a young woman. So because you can't have a dairymaid, helping you wipe your butt if you're royalty. So that's where you go. You entertain them. You make sure, they never really show this, but you know what a lot of women did during this time? Made clothes.
No.
They made clothes, because everything had to be, they were making the thread, they were weaving, and they were making clothes. There was no mass manufacturing of clothes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So a lot of women in court were often sewing and embroidering. They were making fucking clothes for everybody. So they did a lot of that. You played cards.
That sounds so horrible. Sorry.
I know. You played cards, you gambled, you listened to the musicians, you had dances, you had dinners, you went to royal events. It was that sort of thing. You were their companions.
Okay, that's fair.
So she did this in France for Henry the VIII's sister Mary, who was the Queen of France for a while until her husband died. And then she became Mary's stepdaughter. She became Queen Claudia's lady in waiting. So she spent a ton of time in France, and she was fluent in French. And again, very well educated. It's where she started to learn about the Reformist Church, Martin Luther and all that. So Tinsdale. So she was, and the French court was considered very exotic and sexy and a little scandalous, So, here she was, this English young girl, no parental supervision, in a French court as a teenager.
Oh.
Yeah, you might as well be at the back of a Rolling Stones concert. It's just like that sort of like anything goes. So again, but because of this, she was well educated, and she had lots of she got to hear poetry, and she was exposed to so much art and culture and
She was
fashion.
probably really fun.
She was a blast in comparison to Mary, who was a good Catholic and her middle-aged Catholic woman who had a lot of sadness. Anne was a blast. So anyway, she comes back in early 1520s. Her sister Mary becomes the mistress of Henry the VIII.
Okay. Whoa! Wow! Wow!
It is suspected that he fathered her first two children, Mary's first two children, but she was married, and so those children got pushed off onto her husband. But yeah, so not just for a little bit. Mary was his mistress for a while. Before
that's convoluted, man.
Yeah, and here's the funny thing too, is that Mary was also in the French court, and it's suspected that she was King Louis VII's mistress as well.
Girl,
I know, right? Damn. So yeah,
Wow.
talk about incestuous.
Fun.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in the 1522, Anne comes back to England, and she is supposed to be marrying her cousin, James Butler, the 9th Earl of Ormond in Ireland. Well, if you're a fun girl from France who's just spent the last almost 10 years in Paris, you do not want to go to Ireland. That is lame.
No.
So for some reason, it didn't go through. Who knows what? But anyway, she ends up becoming a maid of honor for Catherine of Aragon. She was very popular at court. She was very intelligent and witty and fashion forward, and she was entertaining. And she catches the eye of Henry Percy, the 5th Earl of Northumberland, who is a catch. But when their fathers found out about it, it was broken up. Now, this is going to come back because they were secretly betrothed. So that basically means they were secretly married, but they weren't married in the eyes of God. So this will come back to haunt her later. Anyway, that's broken up. And then in March of 1526, Henry tries to take her on as a mistress, and she says no. She will be his friend and comrade, but she will not be his mistress because she has a bigger prize in mind. She saw how her sister didn't get very much out of her relationship.
She totally friend zoned the King of England. She FZ'd the King of England. Friend zone.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. That's what she did. She's like, yeah, I'm not going to be your mistress. I'll be your wife, but I will not be your mistress. And she stuck to it. Now, I'm not saying they didn't get to first or second or even third base. I'm not saying that there wasn't a little backdoor entry, because butt babies don't take. I'm not saying that none of that didn't happen. But for all intents purposes, they did not seal the deal until they were betrothed. And it took a long time because, they had to go through the Pope, who hemmed and hawed. And then the Pope got taken hostage by the Spanish, and the Spanish didn't want this annulment. Anyway, it was a whole thing until finally, using with the help of Thomas Cromwell, one of his advisors, he starts the English Reformation, the divine right of the king. He annuls his marriage to Catherine. And before he marries Anne, he makes her the Marquise of Pembroke. So now she's actually royalty, which was important. And they get married.
Marquise is a pretty good royalty. That's pretty high. It's like
exactly.
That's higher than Duke. All right.
It's higher than Duke. So, he made her a very important woman, very, very wealthy woman, before she even got married. So they get married in January of 1533. And her motto is most happy. That's her motto as queen. She's crowned in June of 1533. She's the last of his wives that will actually be crowned queen. She'll actually go through a crowning ceremony. She was remarkably unpopular with the public. Oh, man. They called her the concubine. They called her the whore. They called her that person. So, yeah, she was not popular. In 1533, she gives birth to a daughter, Elizabeth I, who we know goes on to make her own mark.
To kick some ass.
Anne will have 3 more miscarriages. And in January of 1536, Catherine of Aragon finally dies. And then Anne has her last miscarriage on the day that they buried Catherine.
Hmm.
Henry starts courting Jane Seymour, who is part of Anne's court and was also part of Catherine's court. He likes
For
to
crying out
fish
loud.
close to home. He's a shit where he eats sort of man.
Obviously. Jesus.
In order to get rid of Anne, he has her investigated for high treason, which includes adultery, incest, and plotting to kill the king. And the incest part was that she was accused of having sex with her brother.
Ooh.
Which she did not. She didn't do any of this. She was just not having sons. That was the problem. She was very, very opinionated, very demanding, and she wasn't having any sons. So eventually, she's tried for treason. And this was not an unusual thing. She didn't have a defense attorney. In England at the time, if you were being brought up on charges, you were not allowed an attorney. In 1536, she is beheaded. And also her marriage was annulled. Henry just didn't want her dead. He wanted to say that he never was married to her. And that made their daughter Elizabeth was declared a bastard.
So dead's not enough. When
dead's not enough,
we annul the marriage first. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So from the time she was married to the time she was beheaded was just over 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. It was fast. Wow. It was fast.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Why is it in terms of all of the wives of Henry VIII, why is it that we hear her name the most? Because she wasn't the only, she was one of two that got beheaded. Why is it that we hear so much? What is the infatuation that we have with Anne Boleyn?
Well, one, she was that was the first queen that ever happened to. And two, she had a big influence on the changing religious dynamics of the world. Okay. The modern world, was all Catholic. So England, France, Spain, all the biggies, the Netherlands, Scotland, these were all Catholic countries. And there was this heretic in Germany, this Martin Luther, who was starting to talk about how Christians didn't need go-betweens. They didn't need priests. They didn't need popes. They could have a direct relationship with God. They should learn to read so they could read the Bible and have a direct relationship with God. And Anne was a big proponent of that. And so in order for Henry to get rid of Catherine of Aragon, he had to become the head of his own church. And the hope was that he would eventually become a reformist and a Protestant, which he never quite did, but that was the hope. So not only was she a homewrecker, she was also, the devil incarnate. So she was
not liked, which probably made it much easier to behead her. So
it made it much easier. And it was like, she was so different from the model of a queen than anybody before her in any other country. So that's why we remember her. She was a commoner. She was unladylike. She was,
she was fun.
She was fun. Exactly. She was fun. She was smart.
She was fun. There you go.
So Jane Seymour is the opposite of Anne Boleyn.
Jane Seymour, who was part of her court and part of Catherine Aragon's court. Okay.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So here we got
just
Jane.
Waiting there in the wings. Okay.
Just waiting there. And Jane was, never been pre-contracted to marry anybody else. Wasn't considered very attractive. The youngest daughter of a very old noble family. She was English. She was born around 1508, but again, the youngest daughter, who's paying attention? She died in October 24th of 1537. She was not well educated, not compared to the first two queens. Her family was not wealthy, and what was the point? Around 1532-ish, because of her noble parentage, she did get to become a maid of honor for Queen Catherine, and then she went on to serve Queen Anne. So she was at court. She was there around, and 3 months before Anne was executed, Henry took an interest in her. So this happened very fast. With Anne and Catherine, it took 7 years. It was like, boom, that's the next one. I want her. This other lady needs to be out. Advisors, how do I get her out? And how would I get this one in? So there you go. 3 months later,
you almost wonder how Henry had time to rule because he was so busy trying to arrange his ladies.
He had pretty good advisors around him to rule.
Obviously,
but like I said, he was never a very good king. He could be fun, and he could be, but he was just not. just wasn't really into ruling, and he just wanted a son, and everybody was being mean to him. Anyway,
This is boring. Yeah, I got it.
oh, and so in May of 1536, he's betrothed to Anne. One day after he's betrothed to Jane, one day after Anne's execution. So he's like, he's got to get Jane in there.
Time. Yep.
As soon as possible. Yep. Neither one of them. So in June of 1536, a month after she's not even a month, 2 weeks after they're married, she's publicly declared queen. She did not get to go through any fun rituals or anything. They're just like, she's queen. Her motto is bound to obey and serve. So yeah, she's like, yeah. She was popular with the common people. They liked her. She was strict and formal, and there was no lavish entertainments. Like I said, she was the opposite of Anne.
Wasn't fun.
She wasn't fun. She kept her mouth shut. She was very, meek and mild. She was supportive of Catherine of Aragon and of her daughter Mary and of Catholicism. So people thought if she had lived, she might have been able to turn Henry back to the church, to the Catholic Church. She banned French fashions that Anne had introduced. Anne had introduced a veil that showed the hair, which was very scandalous. And Jane brought back the veil that had this it's almost like a house on top of your head to cover up your hair so you weren't being slutty. She got Henry and Mary to reconcile. Henry was very mad at his daughter for taking her mother's side instead of his side. So she got them to reconcile. He still didn't, she was still considered a bastard, but she got to come to court again. So that was nice. And she didn't have to wait on Elizabeth anymore. For a while, he made her wait on Elizabeth because he was hoping to, but now Elizabeth was a bastard too. So everybody's a bastard. About January of 1537, Jane does conceive. And on the 12th of October in 1537, she gives birth to Edward IV, the future king.
Hey, the coveted son has finally been born.
Oh, hallelujah. Less than 2 weeks later, she dies of either an infection or pulmonary embolism. They're not sure which one. So she was young, she was in her early 20s. And when he died, when Henry died, he was actually buried next to her. So he requested that he be buried.
He must have liked her enough then to, want that.
He liked her. He felt that, yeah. So it would have been a very different place if Jane had lived. She was accepted by all of Europe. She was accepted by the common people. She was popular. She gave him a son. She did everything a queen was supposed to do.
She was a good mob wife.
She was a good mob wife. Exactly. She composed herself in a dignified manner, which sometimes Anne was not known to do so. So, so basically he got a younger, plainer, not as well educated version of Catherine of Aragon. That's what he was looking for.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
Yeah, he flew too close to the sun with Anne Boleyn.
Oh man, did he fly close to the sun? And it could have been amazing, but he wasn't. He was too busy being lame. She couldn't do the one thing she promised. Have a son.
Yeah.
And Jane did. Jane didn't live long enough to become somebody that he hated.
Oh, that's a good point.
So, it's who knows? Maybe he would have favored her forever, or maybe he would have gotten tired of her and moved on to somebody else. He does have a history.
Yeah. He has a history of getting tired and then doing something about it. So
doing something about it. So just a little bit before we take off for today, if you're interested in some nonfiction, The Wives of Henry VIII by Antonia Fraser, The Hidden Lives of Tudor Women, a Societal History. This is by Elizabeth Norton. And The Six Wives of Henry VIII by Alison Weir. This is probably the third one, is probably the most common book that you'll see about the wives of Henry VIII. It's the most referred to. If you want to have
the best one.
I love The Hidden Lives of Tudor Women because it not only talks about the queens, but it also talks about being a woman in Tudor times. So that's my favorite one.
Okay.
If you want to read some good nonfiction, any of the Philippa Gregory books are fun. They are not brilliantly written. They're super easy to read though. So, and she focuses a lot on Tudor times. So that's good. Okay. Wolf Hall Trilogy. This is actually about Thomas Cromwell, but Catherine and Jane and Anne of Cleves all play prominent roles in this trilogy. Very fascinating. I love this set of books. They're so beautifully written and so chewy and delicious. Oh, I love them. An excellent podcast is The Explorer. She has a whole season about the life and of Tudor women and about these queens. And then, of course, the musical 6. Gotta go see it.
What about the book? This was on Oprah's like book club years ago. The Other Boleyn Girl.
Oh, that's Philippa Gregory. That's her book.
Oh, it is. Okay, it's one of those.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So yeah,
Sweet.
so it's
Okay.
slutty fun. Oh, Jenny, that book is
Oh,
slutty
yay.
fun. Yeah, it's if you want a sexy costume fiction with lots of titillation, that's your book. She writes,
Cool.
like I said, great airport books. You get them, you read them on a plane, you can
I
finish
love
them.
airport books.
Yeah, you can finish it
And
in
then you
no
just leave it.
time. Yeah.
Leave it where you are. Yeah.
Exactly.
next
Leave it
person.
for the next person. Exactly.
Yes.
Like I said, not brilliant, but man, whenever she has a new one out, I can't resist. I'm just like, okay, yay. Reese's peanut butter cups of Tudor fiction.
That's hilarious.
Exactly. So
what
there
a
you go.
nerd, Ann Brothers. You're a nerd.
I know. I'm super nerdy. I love these women. Love them so much.
No,
All right.
that's awesome.
There you go.
Now, okay, to be clear, this was only part 1. Anne has only just scratched the surface of the Tudor women. The first 3 are in the books. Again, that's Catherine of Aragon, it's Anne Boleyn, it's Jane Seymour. We got 3 more to go. We got Anna Cleves, we've got Catherine Howard, and we've got Catherine Parr next week. So the fun is far from over. Great job, you guys, sitting through that history lesson. You learned a bunch of things about stuff. You learned about the first three wives of Henry the VIII. We'd love to hear from you. We want your commentary. We want things that you also know about these awesome women thus far. Remember, we want to hear from you. We got polls, we got questions, so we want to hear from you. Give us your questions, concerns, comments, and confessions. That's right.
Has your husband ever slept with your sister?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to ask him.
No. But it would be a good confession. That was so funny too. Like that got brought into Anne, like when they were trying to decide if they're going to set her aside or kill her. There was like, well, did Henry, because he slept with her sister, was that incestuous? Does that mean he couldn't marry her? There was a bunch of stuff before they actually got to cutting off her head. They went through a bunch of other things first, and that was one of them. It's like,
wow,
gross, ew.
Yeah,
gross.
ew.
Like, and the thing is, Henry was not terribly imaginative, as you can see.
No.
All right, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Hey, make sure you again follow us, subscribe, leave a review, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon. Put the word out. Let people know that we're here. We want to hear from you. And again, you can support us for free. It costs you nothing, but just a couple minutes to hit that like button. Smash that button. Smash it. So there we go. Join us next week, you guys. We're going to talk about the other half of those 6 wives. That's right. We've got we've got 3 left, 3 down, 3 to go. So catch next week, part 2. We'll be here on a Sunday. I have no idea what time yet because we never quite know. So that's okay. But until then, I'm Janice Brothers, and with me is my sister
Ann Brothers,
who knows a thing or two about the Tudor wives. That's for sure.
Exactly.
So again, you guys, we encourage you to get out there, do something smart, do something dumb, do something fun. We are out of here.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody. Be good.